just turned this thing off here. Give me just a second. And I don't know why this is not working. Okay. I didn't know why that didn't work, but it didn't work. Welcome to Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. I appreciate everyone for tuning in for this episode. I am privileged to be rejoined once again by, I don't consider many actors friends. This one I do. Alexis, Cruz, Skaara, in the feature film and in SG1. My friend, I am thrilled to have you back. How are you doing? How are things going?
Thanks. Thank you. It's great to be back. I love to count you all as one of my friends too, Dave. For real.
Absolutely. Dude, we have more Stargate. What the
I think
heck?
amazing.
Right?
Long time coming.
Man, what do you think about that? Was it just, oh, it was just a matter of time? Or did you think maybe that ship had sailed? I'm curious as to your perspective.
No, I definitely think that it was a matter of time. It was only a matter of time.
Okay.
I wasn't sure whether that time would be within my time, you know, our time, right? But it was an inevitability eventually over
Okay.
time. It's just too big a franchise. It's too connected. It's
It's true.
generation, you know, that at some point somebody was going to bring it back. That it's happening now is phenomenal because, everybody gets to share in it. That's,
Right.
in terms of it being current and done, there's been enough time. There's been, a moratorium, and I mean that in a positive sense, right? We look
Yeah.
back on what worked, what didn't work, what great, but there's enough time now to reset, and move on and launch something new with, there have been palate cleansers along the way, as it were, and now we're ready. So, and we know what we're gonna get for the most part. Not we, I'm not talking as an audience, but we have a sense that, uh, from
You
what
mean like quality?
in terms of quality, right?
Yeah.
Quality that people who are making it know what they're doing and they know the franchise and all of that kind of thing, right? We have hopeful optimism for it, but yeah, it was inevitable.
Yeah. No, this thing has more lives than a cat, and it was interesting fielding people off
Oh,
for
you know what? Hang on.
years.
Let me
It's
amend
like,
this a second. Let me amend this a second because I just realized
please.
hindsight, like how that sounds, and that yes, it's inevitable, but I don't want that to take away from God knows whatever work and pitches and pushbacks and tug and back that it took for them to get it going again, to get it greenlit again, to detangle it from past glories and previous critiques, right? And to turn it whatever that process was. I heard it was at least a year in the making. I'm
Yeah.
sure far more in the is an incredible accomplishment.
Inevitable does not mean simple. Um, this thing, I don't know if how big of a Simpsons fan you are, if at all, but there is a scene in one of my favorite episodes with Sideshow Bob in a series of rakes, and every turn that he takes, he gets whacked in the face with the stem of a rake, and it really felt like Stargate was doing that for a while because things would spool up and okay, we're going to get, we can potentially do a season 3 of Universe.
Mhm.
MGM's filing for bankruptcy. Okay, great. So that's not going to happen now. Now Origins, and I forget what it was. There was something going on there when we were doing Stargate Command, and then something happened for that. And then Brad Wright had a pitch for an idea, and then COVID hit. And then there was another thing that was potentially spooling up as well, and then writer strike and actors strike. And it was no joke, dude. It was seriously like, well, Stargate's just going to have to put on the back burner again. So to illustrate your point, this has been a ridiculous journey. And the fact that Martin Garrow has come out the other end of this wood chipper and is still smiling is I don't know if I would be as, as enthusiastic as he's been in private with myself and Darren, because of just the process, but he genuinely is. So it's like, hey, that's why I am as excited as I am. Otherwise, I would not be half as excited as I am about this. I would still be really looking forward to it, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Real.
Yeah. So any personal updates to share? Anything going on before we really get into the thick of it?
Personally, all's been quiet on the home front. And it's interesting because when you just now you rattled off, that montage of events that slowed everything down, and
Right.
I chuckled because it put it in, as you were saying it put all of that into perspective, because I'd forgotten that there were all of these events that were really challenging for people.
Mm-hmm.
And but specifically for people's work and for people's careers and stuff. And I chuckled because I sort of, oh yeah, I've been good. For a while I stepped away from the river of things, the giant treadmill. I had accomplished a lot of what I had set out to accomplish, at least what I promised myself as a child. And I did a lot of that stuff. And I found myself in sort of finding myself, like, okay, yeah, you have your job and you have your career but what am I? Because this was fundamentally how I started. And everybody watching this who's heard my interviews gets that about me, right? I'm always looking for the why and the me, and gazing at my navel and what does it mean, etc. So with all of that, like I got to a point with my work, and which was so integral to my life, so tied into my identity, that over time I was able to manage to separate it. So that's still a thing and it's doing it, but I have much more control over it and it's not my life anymore. And so for 10, 15 years now, I've been not hanging, but it's not hanging everything on it. I'm still taking meetings and I'm doing projects and you see me on different things here and there, but I'm much less, prioritizing this ladder climbing, this, and maybe the added social media and its saturation and my uncomfortability, something to do with my perception and the decisions I make to put myself there in front of that, right? Because it's not just putting yourself in front of the camera for people. I've done that since I was a kid. It's that the camera now reaches out and grabs you and won't let you go and stays there and follows you, right? It's a whole different animal. And I found my peace in staying connected with as much of a normal life as possible, right? And this, because again, I was a child actor, this eternal question of, is if I couldn't do this, what do I do? And it's terrifying. And who am I? And all of that was managed to be resolved. And the fruits of that is that now I'm in New York. I'm doing very well. I'm doing a lot of theater here in New York, and I'm directing, and I'm enjoying it. Like I'm enjoying that peace, and that focus. And part of the life that I've built, I came to New York, back to where I was born and raised. Found my wife again, who I'd known since childhood. And we had lost touch, and we got together, and we've built this beautiful life. We had a beautiful, amazing child that it's my heart out of my chest on two legs walking around. All of that changes your perspective. No, changes, not the right word. Evolves, settles your perspective. And then all of a sudden, all these things that were like, I had questions about suddenly clicked into place. That's why that happened. That's why this thing. That's why this. That's why I was here instead of there. That's why I was there instead of there, right? All of these things come into place. And my car is now kind of a hovercraft, and I can do whatever I want and go.
If only.
Right? I don't have any, I mean, I don't have power or influence. It's not like, oh, I'm doing that. Oh, I'm doing that. It's not like that, right? We're grinding, but it's this voluntary, like I'm engaging with life, and in that it's I mean, it's good. I don't go hungry. I'm very comfortable. I have friends around me, my colleagues. I'm going through a list now of like celebrations. I'm well.
There you
Um,
go.
but the big major change with my life and our family in general, is where I'm now also in. As all of these things were happening, the universe were
Mm,
like, oh, well, now you're ready for this. Therefore, this thing was happening anyway. My mother was diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's, last year. Well, the year before, officially. So since then, my family's been rallying around, trying to understand the condition, trying to manage it for her, keep our family together. And so this year it was particularly rough as things were progressing. And now I've become her caretaker. So she's with me now, and my family in our home. And we're rebuilding from there. So that takes an extraordinary amount of extra focus. But again, it's sort of like the universe. Again, as you were like, this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and
right.
this. And I remember at those moments, I was like, wow, this is
Hmm.
wild. But now, after the whole chain of it, I'm like, oh, okay, but I collected this that I needed for here. And I was able to
That's right.
collect this that I needed for there, and this that I needed. And here we are now. And this is the most important thing in the world, not just for me because I care about it, but obviously there are people whose lives are in my hands, and I'm responsible for that. And that's uh, a big plate, as it were.
I have a close family, and I've talked to you about this offline. I've had a close family member diagnosed as well, and the future is never certain, as one Omadasala once said to Daniel. And we can only take things day by day. So we might as well put a smile on our faces and be thankful that we are here to experience something. And with a child, how old is he now?
6.
6 years old. You have access to wells of joy and despair and frustration
Not despair.
and
Not despair. I don't have that in my
not just not you know what that was a
terror.
poor choice of words.
Terror.
Poor choice of words. Yes. Yeah. Fear, frustration, that you didn't know were there. When you said earlier it wasn't a change, it was an evolution, it's really just an expansion of all of those emotions. It's like, oh my gosh, my heart has literally expanded out of my body and into this other being that is moving around. That's something that I will never know. So it's hard for me to relate, but you can only imagine. And now on top of that, taking on a family member with a degenerative illness, you know, these things only end one way. But I think that it's heroic is not the right word, because it's not hero. It's ennoble. Because it's the right thing to do. In the West, we don't do that anymore to our loved ones. We just lock them away when they become too complicated to do. And the thing with dementia is some of them can get violent to the point where sometimes you have no choice. But um, until the better end, no, we take care of those who have taken care of us.
Well, this phenomenon is relatively new in our society,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly as widespread as it is, right? Because yeah, I could mention it, and then you're like, yeah, me too, yeah, me too, yeah, me too, and none of us thought about this before
Right.
growing up. Of all on the list of, because we were told at a certain time this happens and this happens, you're going to have to grow into this. That wasn't on the list, right?
Yeah, we're consuming something.
Here we are. um but it is what it is. And in my ultimate, like, you can't escape the inevitable, but you can certainly work towards making a nice landing spot.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're working about on living in love and taking it day by day. So for me, like, I mean, again, we're getting into all this other stuff, and there's plenty of people watching this who are parents and who are going through all of this. But I think the point is, since y'all have last seen me, this is where we're at. And the point is, I'm glad that since then, I have learned to live day by day, because now that's what we have. And when you're once you're ready for that, I thank God I became so. It makes everything easier, makes everything manageable, makes everything. So then we go back to you're saying, like, is this heroic? Is this noble? Is this just necessary? But it gives you the strength to understand the righteousness of that necessary, and that
Correct.
the more strength. You see, if that feeds itself because it's a thing, and I
Hmm.
think we notice because maybe we notice when other people aren't doing it, or other people are doing, or whatever it is that we might have criticisms with the world around us. But it's not that I'm doing anything particularly special. I'm doing what's required, what's expected of myself. That's what love does, you know.
Hmm.
And now that I'm in the position of parent, there's a through line of legacy that happens. My forebears and my legacy that comes after me. I'm in a position to start thinking about these things, you know, which then brings us full circle to the legacy of the show and the generations. You see, there are parallels, and those parallels aren't lost on me, right? And we're able to see this entire project, where it came from, where it goes. And now, what does it mean? What does it mean for us to pick up this mantle, pick up this torch, and run it forward? Forward to where? Towards what
Hmm.
end? We do have one. Just I have one in my life. Martin and these guys have one in this thing. The key point is that that's what you're doing, and that you know that that's what you're doing, and that gives you the strength and the fuel and the vision to carry it out, I suppose.
I think that one of the frustrating things, at least for me, for a long time was, and I've had this you and I have a tendency to get into the existential and the philosophical when we
Okay.
get on the phone together for a couple of hours. It's like,
You can't
because
help how deep we get.
because we don't check in with each other that often, and so when we do, it's like, okay, we're gonna stop everything and we're just gonna be for a while. And
I know. And then when
uh
these people all get to see it all and hear it all.
exactly, here you go, folks, here we are.
Well, it's
The
weird, but it's okay.
what I'm trying to establish is that for a long time, I went from one project to the next until I created something for myself, and then started doing things for myself. I'm 100 pounds lighter than last when I saw you. And that was a transformation that was literally a pain in the ass, but it was also necessary, because if I am to be healthy enough to take care of a member of my family, then I can live with myself. Whereas if I wasn't, I wouldn't have been able to. And that's only one reason, though. I sleep better. God, I sleep so much better. And there's a spring in my step after jumping off of the treadmill. So there's little things like that. But in order to summit the mountain, you have to take the first step. And it's so easy to shroud ourselves in vagueness, to not do that and to just make excuses. And that is only just one journey that I'm talking. There are all kinds of journeys that we go on. But having a North Star, having an anchor point to direct yourself toward, really brings things into focus in so many ways. And if you don't have that, if you're rudderless, um, it's hard to argue with someone when they say, "What's the point?" It's like, yeah, you haven't found one yet, and no one can really determine that for you but you. You have to decide if you're going to find one or not.
Yeah.
So
And it
when,
was worth it.
yeah,
You look amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you, man. Um, if your son came to you and said, "Dad, I want to be on TV," what would your reaction be? With
Uh,
your experience having uh, actor peers who were young when you were young, turn out not so hot, lose some along the way, that's I'm curious as to what your thought process would be going through that, knowing what you know now.
all right, so it has to be right. My answer is entirely hinged on the fact that it's my answer, knowing what I know now, not someone else in my position with but me, where I
That's
came from
correct.
and what I make of it all. I would be very excited for him. I'm looking forward to it. I might be a little low key disappointed if he doesn't. Uh, I love my life. I love my career. I love where it's come. While there were a few scary spots, the person that it made out of me, uh, because I was, or I was a person before that, and that person was able to make a lot of decisions. Some worked in my favor, most ultimately worked in my favor. Some didn't work in my favor, but I didn't understand why until later on. But that base person was capable of it. Could I have done better? Leaps and bounds exponentially.
Alexis, by your bootstraps pulled your family out of your old neighborhood. You did that.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, and during a time when like that's not a thing that was easily done by anybody.
That's right.
Any, but yeah, shoot. Wait, I lost my train of thought. 1 second,
With
sorry.
your son and
All right,
potentially
so
following you.
I'd be very excited because after all, like in the scariest part about it, uh, well, the scariest parts about it, the absolute scariest, the absolute worst parts about it, everybody already knows, and we're finding out worse things about life in the world out there. And I'm no stranger to seeing the shadows around corner. I was lucky that I was never put into those rooms, but I saw the shadows. I understood, and then the rest of me was like, I'm gonna go over here.
Yeah, some really scary ones.
So there, so there's that kind of stuff. But again, I was prepared in a certain way, and I'm giving my son a life. So all that stuff is separate. It's separate. That's a thing that you have to handle wherever you go, anywhere you do, and handle it. Handle it. That that needs to be exercised. But despite that, in the meantime, you raise somebody who has a core sense of self with principles and who wants something. So I want to be on TV. Well, why do you want to be on TV? Now I know
Right.
all the answers. I know the answers. I know the answers that a child would give because they're seeing stuff on TV. And then I understand the answer that they're going to come to as they grow. And then I know the answer of what it actually all means and what you actually should be doing, right? I didn't have somebody with this book giving me page by page as I was coming up, or waiting, not this chapter yet, and now read this chapter. I didn't have any of that, but he does. I made my union pension by the time I was 18, 19. I was done with that. That's a real mechanic of life. Why wouldn't I want that for my kid? That alone has lifted so much weight throughout my life for me, right? Uh, Now it's different in that we don't live in the same generation. Like there were certain things where if there were institutions and there were tracks, and if you do this, this will come, and if you do this long enough, this will come. And I don't know that those promises can be made anymore. So the best thing for me to do for is raise him adaptable. And that means strengthening the core principles and his core critical thinking, his core decision making skills, his ability to defend himself, his ability to see through what people are saying or doing, right? To make decisions based on what he needs rather than he wants. All these things that we hope to put in there. So far, so good, man. So far, so good. And then on top of that is like I literally won't be letting him out of my sight. Like,
Sure.
I'm a phenomenal acting teacher. His mom is a phenomenal actor and acting teacher, very well respected by her colleagues. Um, like this kid, if he wanted to, we're just waiting for him to step up. It's going to be his, but it has to be his choice because that's what's going to carry us through and through all the hard times because that road is not easy. It's just not. And you have to be willing to sign up to go be a soldier, man. Like this, like the long haul, the real thing.
Mm.
Anybody can be on TV, bro. Anybody can be on TV today. You know? Do you mean I want to be on TV because I want to be somebody? Make things and give things. That's a whole nother road. You need to enlist in that, you know? And it's not for anybody. And I can tell people it'll turn people off. Oh, I don't know. I don't believe you. I don't. None of it matters. Again, I'm talking as me, myself, what I know, and what I've done about my legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Comes to me. This is the work. Like that's our paradigm.
Especially now when you've got folks who are convinced that the world was waiting for them to come along and fill it. Uh, it's an interesting dynamic that we've got
Well, in this
today.
case, they are. They just don't know it yet. And so I got to prepare this kid to fill it because you are waiting for him to come up and do his thing. And that's okay. I didn't want anybody to know about it. Like, spoils the surprise.
But in terms of how the person presents themselves in the world, there's a certain amount of um, humility that goes a long way.
Sure. 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 But I think I'm coming to the conclusion that humility is also often it comes out of being imposed. Most people aren't naturally humble if they don't have to be because nothing's because what is the definition of that without context?
That's true.
Right? So if you don't have any context, once you do have context and you get humble, right? Whether because you understood that context and made a choice, or because you didn't understand that context, but the context understood you and forced you, either way, right? But I think that dynamic has to happen for most people, not everybody, but for most people. I think certainly for most people to trust someone else behaving in a humble manner, we have to have an understanding that that was earned. But once it is earned, it fundamentally changes the character of a person. And you can feel that. You feel that in their presence. You feel that in the space they take up, or how they take up space or not.
Mm.
Deep
Raj Luth, what'd you say?
Deep thoughts.
No, absolutely. This is what I enjoy having. This is why I enjoy having you on. Raj Luthra wants to know:
Oh, yeah.
were you asked to participate in the fourth television series? Were you asked? Would you jump on that opportunity, or would you um have to take some time to think about it? I'm curious, either in a continuation for this character or as something new, because there were a lot of things that were I can tell you that there were a lot of things that were brought over from the movie into SG1, a few things that were even carried into Atlantis. There's certain like There's a tradition, there's a naval tradition where when one ship is decommissioned, a piece of it is placed into the next one and on down the line. There would be something very appropriate about bringing you in some way, shape, or form.
Reuse my driftwood. Reuse my driftwood.
You're not driftwood, man. Come on.
I had to take the opportunity on that guy. I'm a word player. I get it. Yeah. So I don't believe that anybody, to my knowledge, and I don't know too much, but I don't believe anybody that we all know of was asked back right away. And I don't know who of anybody that everybody knows was asked back at all. Like, not a single person. I have no idea.
We're just floating the idea, would were you approached? I'm not asking you
no, I'll answer
were
that
you
too.
approached? I'm asking if you were to be approached is what I meant. I apologize.
The part one is nobody has, but if I,
right.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
I mean, I love the franchise. To say that I love the character, that I have a connection with the characters, there aren't really many words for it anymore.
It's a vast understatement considering our conversations.
Vast understatement. Right. So, that will live forever in my head canon. There's a little pocket dimension and things continue. And then, as actors, we all are that with a handful of roles that we're connected to that way.
There's certain things that just don't leave you. Yeah.
Be interested. There's no reason not to be. Like, I'm not at this place of, oh, that was a thing that I did as a kid that was typecast. And, there was a little way on the way where I had some awkwardness and uncomfortability with how I related to that vibe, that mythology, as I was sort of dealing with my own life and how things layered, right? That's not a thing now. It's just not a thing. So it would be very interesting. Now, that said, I'm also, as a storyteller, like, it's not even personal. As a storyteller, I would be a little sort of weary or like about the, if you're going to make a new franchise, you're going to want to move on to things. And while there are callbacks and there are Easter eggs and there's different things, you have to be very careful as a storyteller about how you handle that, the appropriateness of these things. And at this point, not to do fan service, but to do narrative service, right? And we've seen it done wrong. So I don't think that that's going to happen again here. I think that there's a way to do it right. And I think people have learned in general to do it right. So in terms of that character that I'd created in that, it's deep, it's complex. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to consider just in the base mythology as it stands. There's a lot to consider. And so how would you do that? I have a few ideas of my own, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that there needs to be a lot of thought involved in that. And because of the kind of creative that I am today, I would want to contribute to that thought, or at least, give my take on who that guy is and what he's lived with and all that.
Meaning Skaara, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Lived and died with.
But again, this is all part of the world, the universe mythology, and what can be, so much like Star Wars. And I do think that there are parallels here.
Sure.
In terms of its expanded universe and its potential for an expanded universe, and how that gets under our skin and into as audiences, our head canons, right? And I know I'm
Mhm.
looking at you guys out there, like we have years of head canons in our heads. You guys have for us and each other, right? So we have that, and just like an expanded universe, it's a big galaxy, it's a big universe. This might even be bigger in theory in the fiction, right? So there's a lot of room for different tones and different scenarios, different corners of this galaxy and things that are happening. So I think there's a lot of really rich potential with all of that legacy universe stuff. Uh, but who knows? Conversely, sorry,
You're okay.
uh, conversely, there's also the do something new.
That's just it. Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of for me, like would I want to come back to the show? Yeah, man, I'd want to do that. Or I could do like what else we got? Let's do something new, right?
That's one of the things that
I
has.
haven't, I'll tell you, I have not, I've gotten better and not worse at my job.
I like many fans out there are hoping for certain folks to come back, but I'm also very interested in some folks coming back as new things because why the heck not? That the show successfully did that from some in some cases series to series, but in some cases season to season. There were certain people who was like, this guy's good. This gal's good. We're going to bring them back again to do this again, but with another role, or we're going to change it to do this. I think that on one hand, yes, it does break the illusion a little bit, but we all know that it's an illusion, and we choose to put ourselves in front of that space and let it envelop us. So you choose to buy it or not. And at the end of the day, that's down to you. So I think that
But
there's
nobody confused Tom Zarek for Apollo.
not by the end of that show, they sure did not. And I would argue not by the end of that first episode.
Uh, I agree.
What a remarkable performance Richard
Like
Hatch had.
5-10 minutes into it,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
right.
Uh, but that's it's all it prompts a lot of uh, wishful thinking for the universe and for that narrative for me anyway. I'm not uh, I never created Stargate or had anything to do with its creation. I don't
Vehemently disagree, but pray continue.
so I don't have this hanging on ownership of that. I have a certain internal ownership of this particular character's arc and why and wherefore, uh, and mostly because I understand the soil that was planted in and where it grew, and I did that on purpose, uh, but not with anything else. And so I love the story. I love what it's become and different things, and even where along the way I'd be like, I don't know about that plot point. That's weird. It's still stuck, and I still like in my own head canon. I'm like, oh, but this and this. I sit there. I'm a gamer, right? So I fantasize about different scenarios, like Dungeon Master of D&D and stuff. So
It's true.
like I have my own SG1 role playing game scenarios in my head constantly all the time. So when you think about that stuff, I don't have ownership of any of that stuff. Like I mean in this visceral emotional sense, I don't have any ownership there. So therefore I don't have stakes on that. And of all of the things in my world that has been in my world, the best thing that I could have done for myself is to release myself from having stakes in that. Because when you have stakes in something like that, and then you're not a big part of it, man, that'll mess you up. right?
Not to say that you no longer care about it,
Right. No, 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 no,
but
no.
it's a freeing yourself of what it will become next, I think is what you're getting at.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, yes. It
Okay.
frees you to appreciate whatever it is going to come next, and then how does that legacy? How do these other things plug into it? And that stuff is fun in that way, you know. Uh, and then I think, like anything else, it's along the way. It's what are people going to do to make the show better?
Mm,
What the audience is going to do to be a part of that appreciation, and because so much of this franchise and its success was the mobilization of the community,
mhm,
right? And how we supported, how we gave us a home outside of the soundstage. Every city we went to, every convention we had, right? You created a home, a place for us to be. It was these satellites of existence for this universe, for this franchise, for everything above the table for us to be and be comfortable and get feedback directly, immediately. And all that built on itself, create this wave over 2 and 3 generations, right? Having that home, having that life. So it's a back and forth. And I think over time, um, there's it's hard to speculate because there's so much room for everything, and you get excited about how much of the old stuff are they doing, how much of the new stuff are they doing, are they going to combine everything, is it going to be one thing and then another, like you'll drive yourself crazy. Don't do that. Sit back, wait for it, it's going to be
yeah, you're
interesting.
here, you've made it. Don't blow it. Just breathe and do
Yeah,
your part and live.
yeah, and enjoy it.
Yeah.
uh, and
Um,
enjoy the excitement, like it's exciting. I'm not actually, no, let me don't do that, meaning don't stress about it. I definitely do all of the talking and speculating, do that because that's fun.
no, don't be passive. Yeah, be a participant for sure.
Yeah.
Um, your fellow Scoo wants to know, hey Alexis, uh, what was James Spader like on set? You and I have spoken about Kurt a fair bit. I don't recall ever really speaking to you about James. One of the things that has been made clear since um, long since is that Spader did the film for the paycheck. That was the primary reason for him. But the fact of the matter is that role was just so well defined by the writers and by he that when Michael Shanks came along, I mean, he was being handed a baton in a relay race and ended up taking it, uh, to marathon.
Yeah.
He didn't stop. What was James Spader like? What do you remember?
um Not a lot.
And it's okay if that's nothing. Yeah,
It was a long time ago.
yeah.
He was fine, in terms of when we were polite and cordial. We didn't have a very close relationship in
Mm,
particular. um I think I was closer with Kurt and the other cast and crew in general.
okay.
But that's a measure of, I guess, who they are in that way. And knowing what I know now, that honestly means nothing, right? Some people are introverted, some people are
Yeah,
extroverted. It's just who they are, right? And while you're in the context of work, you're in this professional environment, you know, um, we are who we are. So I can't, I want to be able to give like here's some insight and something warm, insightful, but I just don't know what I could, like, we were fine.
mhm,
And the whole set was uh, amazing. It was an amazing experience all the way around. What I can tell you, but I know about him, that is that he's an intellectual, and that was really fascinating aspect for me in getting to know him and the time that we worked together, because he was such an intellectual. And at the time, I had a lot of friends who thought that they would consider me an intellectual, and I knew that I was not in any way, shape, or form. Um, and so once I met him and understood what that like, then it was cemented that I was not an intellectual. You know, I saw what that is. The example of that, and I say that in a complimentary way. Don't get it twisted.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I understood. It gave me an aspiration
Mm-hmm.
of making myself more specific and
Mm-hmm.
sharp about what I read and what I said, right? All and how that works, about what it is to be an intellectual, right? Not just calling somebody or believing you're one,
Sure.
whatever. And so I think I got my first model on that, I could say, from James. And that's good. So, you know, I keep that. Beyond that, like, we haven't spoken. And then my relationship with Michael became much closer along the way.
Okay. What about Michael? And for the record, if I had uh, to use a noun on you, it would be dreamer. But what about Michael Shanks?
Well, Michael's exactly who you feel Michael is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, completely. Um, he's warm, he's loving, he's smart, he's generous. All of that we connected right away. At the time when we first started the show, too, it was, you know, he'd been an actor for a while, but this was like his first, or one of his first major, was a major thing. But
And he's very young too
there was
for that role.
yeah, yeah. So there was a certain wide-eyedness, you know, eagerness that he had to learn about everything and figure out and do a good job and all that. And it was super charming, you know, it was so endearing. His earnestness was so incredibly endearing. It was undeniable, that
It
earnest.
certainly helped the character.
It did, because the character was earnest, and I give that to James initially in investing that. And part of the brilliance of that original performance, again in the context of the above the table with the actors, that
Mm.
up until then you had rarely, if ever, seen such a character out of that actor, and then
Okay.
you rarely, if ever, saw such a character out of that actor ever again. I don't know how that actor feels about this role, but that role stands out in the filmography. It's undeniable. So there was that thing, and that earnestness was the central core key of the character. Like, I mean, it's a brilliant actor. He just goes, you know, here we go. Whether you do it for the money or not, whatever you're, but here we go. What is this? And doop, there's the core. That,
And he hit it.
you know, you
Yeah.
don't just stumble on that, right? So he hit the core. So then Michael comes along, and Michael is the core. Like, that's who he is this guy. The rest is Daniel Jackson scaffolding, you know?
It's true. Yeah. I think
And
that's why we
he
feel it so
just
strongly.
takes it. And then you let the guy, you go, okay, so now we got 4, 5, 6, 10 seasons. And who's gonna know this guy better than you? This guy.
That's it. Yeah, no, I would.
Yeah, and I respect. That's the other, like, part of my love for Michael is that it rises to respect. So it's beyond this familial love, but I respect how he built that scaffolding
Mm,
for those 11 years. You know, I respect his craftsmanship on that along the way. And what I couldn't see maybe in the very first beginnings, we never do. Over time, I was like, oh, it's fascinating.
hmm
What he did with that. That's cool. you know, because he is now the character and the character is now him, but there is a distinct difference between Daniel Jackson and Michael Shanks. Still, like there's right. So it's the same earnestness, that core. But that's a brilliant like and we're none the wiser, right? Blends seamlessly. It's just brilliant, and I love him for that.
One of the things that we're already at an hour, man. I am so sorry. How
So
are
I'm
you
fine.
okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I did not want to abuse your time. I just wanted to bring that up there. If you need to flag. One of the interesting conversations that I had with him not too terribly long ago, it revolved around the fact that, you know, as a series goes along, you incorporate more of yourself into the character. And one of the things that he said was like at near the end of that, it was hard to tell where Michael ended and Daniel began, because after he fell from Ascension, he was he had a much rougher edge to him, and the wet behind the ears was gone, and the eagerness about the universe had become far more world weary. And also at the same time, Richard Dean Anderson had left the team by the 8th season. So
Mhm.
he got to take on a lot of the characteristics of Jack, because Jack wasn't there. And that would make sense, because I think a part of Daniel would want Jack to continue to be represented on the team in some way. So by the time, like in Children of the Gods, it's Michael Shanks, uh, a little bit of with a little bit of a James Spader impression, but by, you know, just not even before that pilot has done, he's completely harnessed that thing all his own. But by the end of, I would say, season 3, around the time that he lost the long hair, like that character was beginning to really morph into who Michael was, to the point where Michael says that, like, there's just so much of him that's just me now. And there is, I would think that would, I'm trying to figure out how I would feel about I think you play a character that long, I think it's inevitable.
It is inevitable. And
They become
there's
you, or you become them, or some combination of the two.
well, it's a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern situation, right? These characters do not continue to exist in our material world once the camera shuts off. Once its airtime is done, these characters don't exist. But we have to treat them like they do exist. We have to treat them like they've just phased into some other reality, right? Um, what is that story?
Mm,
The truth is that story is the actor's background. It goes into here and he's living, right? So Thursday, November 12th is a Thursday, November 12th for that guy somewhere. You're just not hearing about it, right? And then Friday, November 14th is still the same Friday, November 14th for Skaara, wherever he is. In my right, it's there. So because of that, we are carrying these things. They don't exist. And so it's inevitable that they become more and more infused with us. Now, here's where I think the key thing, this is theory crafting, acting theory crafting here, where the key part of that is that these changes, these evolutions, these adaptations, the things that make us different from one day to the next have to be earned.
mm,
Because that character off screen, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, they're not actually enduring anything. They're not going through anything. There's nothing triggering any kind of self-reflection growth. There isn't. They don't exist. But there is for you in your life. And so you take those things and you learn that perspective. And sometimes for us, for me, my characters that I carry with me help remind me of who I am. There's a sort of peanut gallery. They're like little Jiminy Crickets, sometimes whispering in my ear, reminding me, right? Um, and you can keep them there for that in your head
mm,
canon. So earning these things, right? So Daniel Jackson He was eager, but that's not the same as earnest. And I want to return back to this word, earnest. Daniel Jackson has never changed from being earnest. He changed from being eager. That's something different, right? And let's note how that change manifested and what was triggered by it. For you to understand where Jack was and who he became and all that, that was triggered, pardon the pun, by a very specific incident in his life.
Yeah.
To change. Now, he was a person who was already a soldier, though, not Daniel, but he was already a soldier. And then this thing made him metastasize into something that we know, right?
Boy, did it.
And Richard Dean, you know, for television, brilliantly brought some levity, humanized that part of it so that we could, because otherwise you can't live with Jack O'Neill for 11 years the way he, like,
No.
Right? Not healthy.
No,
So,
but my excuse has always been he took on comedy in order to not self-delete.
right. So that's who he was, and that's who he became, and he was captain and general and all of that. Meanwhile, for Daniel to lose his eagerness, but retain his earnestness, he needs a trigger, an event in his life that is going to show him how serious and grave things are. To take on Jack's perspective, his understanding that it's not all curiosities and roses, right? That tomb you open will blow up in your face one day. It's not, how interesting, right? So it's that kind of approach that when he ascended, that veil was lifted. He was not the soldier and he wasn't hardened that to begin with. He was an earnest person who thought about it, right? But the trigger was that he now sees reality for what it is, not for what he wanted it to be. Jack was way on the other side of that mountain. He saw it for what it was, not what he wanted to be. But on the other hand, the danger of that is sometimes you start making up stuff because you're so afraid of what you think it is. And that's the whole story there. Now, if these two were the same characters, then that's where it would have gone for Daniel too, but it didn't because he's a fundamentally different person. So that trigger of understanding the world as it is going to affect him differently.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We could say, and I think, you know, Daniel came back with Michael in tow, filling it, right? You're seeing the inverse position of real life, filling it. And he took what Michael understands is the rest of real life. Michael is an adult in America. He right. He's a father. He's a professional that goes to work. All these things that make us right. They all come now, and he borrows them. And for him, that was, I'm ascended. I see all these things, and I see what is righteous, but cruel and beneficial, but toxic, and all these different. And so now he has to come back at it from a different way. He is still a scientist. When he comes back to Earth, he's grounded again, no less earnest, not eager because he's now considerate. And for the rest of us, we're all like, wow, man, you changed. What happened to you? Like, why are you so serious? And he's like, I'm not really serious. I just understand things now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're not used to, like, we're not used to not seeing. So let me tell you about these cartoons. We're not used to seeing that anymore. But how long are you going to do? Like, that's just 12 years later through all of these events. If we maintain in any of these characters as they were before, however much we like them at those moments, it undoes and cheapens the events that they actually lived through.
Endured.
Initiated, created, you know, because again, not just in the negative, but in their joys and their accomplishments too, right? And these things that the way they've changed the galaxy, the universe of Stargate within the fiction.
And how it's changed them.
become and how it's changed them, because that it's 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 great in the retelling of it to look at these people as heroes. But part of Stargate and its connection, its relativity is that it could be any one of us in there, right? We've talked about that with other people. We've talked about that. And so we have to acknowledge that dynamic of what are these real world things, good and bad, that affect us, that change us, make us new people. Now, what makes someone, I want to say 12, 15 seasons slash years later, is how they have managed to maintain their core principles and evolve those so that they grow as a person, but their values, their integrity doesn't change, because we all fell in love with their integrity, right? If we're watching, there's some shows you watch for the villains because the villains are great and this is what it is, right? Great. This is a show that we watch for the ops, for the heroes.
That's true.
And what we appreciate them is why they're heroes and how we come to that. And we can see that happening because we are them and they are us. We maintain that, So let O'Neill grow. Let Daniel grow. Let all these people grow and have their lives. And so there's been plenty of that. I mean, there's promotions and stuff, but what we're talking about, their personalities and how much they borrow from us, it's inevitable. It's necessary for them to return to present to you as real, alive people. And not just here's an illusion of Daniel Jackson, but I'm so out of touch with playing this guy. I have no idea what's going on there. But here's what you wanted to see, right? We don't do that.
And you can feel it when actors do that. There have been a couple of instances where it's been like, yeah, they're phoning it in on this one here. You just feel it. You feel that it's not there. It's that you don't feel it. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. I I tend not to think about that too much at all, because now that when I do see that, those performances tend to stand out, and I really don't have to give it a thought. I just hope it doesn't distract from the rest of the viewing experience. But I don't have to think about much, because like it just stands out, when people. Whereas, when everybody's having fun and doing a good job, then you can just enjoy the show.
That's it. It takes care of itself
Yeah,
on a certain level.
yeah. Like, so that's why you don't have to be like, oh, I didn't like this person. This person, like we don't need all the hater hate either,
Right.
or um, when it's that obvious. But then that's so rare too.
Mm.
You know, usually when that happens, you'll get a much more of the cast, and then at that point, you come to realize that that's the writing, and then it's the like. There's a lot of other. Once you start seeing that, you come to realize there's a lot of other issues going on, and then talk about something else.
Marcia Middleton, she wants to know that this winter in New York has brought some challenges. How are Skaara is a son of warmth and deserts, and you've grown up in this part of the world. Do you embrace winter? Does your son embrace the cold and the snow? How has this year been?
It's
It's been cold, right? It's so true.
this is like a bone chilling cold. Like this
I
is
know.
we haven't had this cold in New York in a long time, right? So I've now been here a while, almost a decade, and every winter has been like, yeah, no, this is cool. And then it won't snow until February. And my boy and I go and do snowball fights and stuff. Um, this year, it just suddenly just wind chill, and it's been sustained. So no, it's pretty horrible. It sucks. Nobody's happy about it. Nobody wants to do anything.
Right, you feel immobile.
Yeah, but it's only a couple of months, and we get through it because
That's true.
uh, my boy complains, but he's my boy. My mom complains. She's living in California. you know,
Right. What is this?
It'll be over soon.
Yeah,
You know, we got to think of
sure.
everything like that. It'll be over soon. In the meantime, I put on my coat.
To everything there is a season.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm. Brother.
I try to, especially in today's world, I keep remembering that there's people that have it harder.
Mm.
So I look at the temporary things, I grit my teeth, and then I laugh about it because it is funny afterwards. So
The mountain's not going to summit itself.
yeah, yeah. And and I love New York. I'm in New York for a reason too. So this is part of this sucks, but I'm here to do my thing, and I gotta put up with the call.
We're New Yorkers. This is what we do.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Shout
get
out
on
to
with it.
Minnesota, because that y'all are
Have you been following the Olympics at all?
No, I have not followed it. I'm not a big
Okay.
sports guy to begin with.
Okay.
So I tend not to follow it unless there is a particular story
Mm.
attention to it, which usually does happen every year. There's something going on, because there's always the Olympics is a human interest event. So when the thing in particular has that human interest angle, I'm all over it. But as sports, I'm reading the D&D player's handbook.
I'm generally the same way, but when the Olympics come around, it turns my head, man. I like to look at into the figure skating and the curling, and there's something to be said for attempting to achieve the exceptional. Uh, but we all, if we're fortunate enough to be called to do that in some way, hopefully find a way to do that in our lives with something, because there's more than just one way to do that. So.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been awesome to have you. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness and your candor. I a few years ago I had you on for a podcast that I was hosting when I was at Stargate Command over at MGM, and I had a conversation with you about um, the hero's journey and that whole archetype. And a lot of that came back to me with this episode. And I would love to do some version of that with you again to truly unpack that at this stage in your life with a son, with, well, frankly, another decade on you. And I hope that that would be something you would be interested in doing with me later on
Yeah,
this
I
year,
am. And
because
I always get a little nervous. Part of it, and we've talked about this, there's always a little underlying nervousness that I have with not just ours, but in general, because I know that the SG community and all the interviews, they tend to be very fun. At conventions, people ask me all kinds of crazy questions about pranks,
sure.
and I have no stories for any of that stuff, and I'm so sorry. And it's you'll have Chris Judge, you'll have all these different people who are like, I celebrate it, but at the same time, we all know this happens. Everybody out there, fans that have seen me at conventions, they're like, man, but when it's Alexis's turn, suddenly it's all
Look, there are currently,
no, I haven't heard anybody complain about it. I'm making nobody's complained about it. I'm just noting that, like, I get a little nervous because I know I'm that guy.
well, get over it, my friend, because there are currently 94 people who are interested in what you have to say. And at an hour and 19 minutes into a presentation, that's saying something. So the feature particularly was about several heroes' journeys. And so I think that it's only appropriate, because you are one of those, that we re-examine it now, especially because that podcast has been lost to time. That server is long gone. I would love to re-examine that with you, especially as we get closer to this fourth Stargate thing. So,
Yeah, yeah. There's so many amazing reinforcements
oh
of the hero.
yeah,
And in light, and when you go back, and I think we all really did a few key early things right. And it's showing up again for us to build on. I'm so proud of that, what we built there. Really, really proud of it.
this is your franchise in so many respects. I said the same thing to Kelly Vent. I'm saying it to you. Um, it's it's hard to argue that it's someone else's first, because you guys found you were finding who you were when you shot that. We're always finding who we are. I mean, but you know what I mean. And to have you back to discuss the next whatever this thing is going to be, let alone just catching up with you, has been a profound treat for me and for the crowd who's stuck with us, and means a lot.
The next
Thank
one's
you.
gonna be like four of us. I'd like a sports center type of thing.
Oh my gosh, can you believe that? Let's replay the tape.
That's what happened. When the old quarterbacks retire, we become sports center pundits.
You are not retired. No way. You might be retired from Stargate, but that doesn't mean you have nothing to say. So,
We're
absolutely.
Did you see that scene?
What's the Joe Rogan expression? Alexis, Cruz, thank you, sir, for being with us.
Thank you, David Reed, my brother.
Pleasure to have you, brother.
Thank you all
take
for
care
watching.
Of yourself.
You guys tuning in.
I'm going to wrap up the show on this end, sir. You be well. Bye now. Alexis, Cruz, everyone. Skaara in Stargate SG-1. I am always thrilled when he comes on, because he's such a good time. The dude knows what's up. It is, don't get me wrong, it is wonderful to have a Christopher Judge. It is wonderful to have someone like him who is full of light and just outright affection for humanity. But Alexis, there's something about his thoughtfulness and his measured inward perspective that is very that really clicks with me. And so when he wants to go somewhere, I can't help but follow. And I really appreciate everyone who has followed us through this episode and had a chance really to catch up with him and his perspective on things, because I mean, this is his franchise. So I like that he occasionally, I mean, it's been since episode 151 that we've had him, but he needs to, we are blessed by him coming on and taking the temperature every now and then to see how we're doing and to see how he's doing as well. My name is David Reed. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project. Thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions. It's been wonderful to have you guys for this episode, and tremendous thanks to Marcia and Lockwatcher, who were modding this episode, along with Anthony for the chapter time codes. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, do me a favor and click the like button. It does make a difference with the show and will continue to help us grow our audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And giving the bell icon a tap will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes, and clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few months on both the Dial the Gate and gateworld.net YouTube channels. We have an impressive array of shows heading your way this next few weeks here. I think I'm on track to do 20 episodes in 20 days. They just keep on happening, and I'm very thankful for that. We've got Simone Bailey, Mike Dopud, and Sharon Taylor in a pre-recorded episode tomorrow. That is the second roundtable. Fused Films' Kevin Call is going to be joining us at 8 in the morning, Monday, February the 16th, 8 a.m. Pacific time. This is a pre-recorded show. It's called Jack O'Neill's Finest Hour. And we're going to go in and we're going to break down which episode we feel is his finest and why. And everyone's going to have their own opinions. I put this out there onto the channel a few weeks ago. I said, if you had to pick one, what would it be? And a lot of folks responded. They didn't know that what they were responding to, so I collated a lot of those and put them together for that episode. David Nickel Radek Zelenka in Stargate Atlantis. He is joining us as well Monday, February the 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And then Pierre Bernard O'Brien in Stargate SG-1, 0 Hour and 200. We're going to see if he's still comfortable and angry. And he's going to be February the 17th, that's the Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. For the rest, you can go to dialthegate.com and check everything out, because there's a number of great shows heading your way. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Quick shout out to Matt Eagle SG Wilson, who updated the look of our Hatak mothership in the opening credits. Did a marvelous job there. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you on the other side.